Welcome to Be Me with Shari Ware, the podcast where each day is a step towards a better you and where we focus on progress, not perfection. Join me as we embark on a journey of self-improvement and wellness, focusing on being just a little better than we were yesterday. So today I'm talking to Stel Coombe-Heath, who is a dedicated wellness advocate, energy healer, and yoga teacher committed to supporting individuals on their transformative journey to vibrant wellbeing. Passionate about empowering women who crave more from life but find themselves stuck in the whirlwind of responsibilities and self-neglect, Stel specialises in guiding clients through a journey of self-discovery, breaking through limiting beliefs and cultivating a life of joy, purpose and fulfillment. Drawing from her diverse background as an energy healer, health coach, and yoga teacher, Stel brings a vast toolkit to her practice. She blends ancient wisdom with modern practices to help clients release energetic blocks, manage stress, and align with their highest potential, which all sounds extremely interesting to me. But before we get stuck into it, welcome to the podcast, Stel. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Shari.
This is exciting. Now, I do want to talk about why you do what you do. I always pretty much start with that because I do know that it's so important for people to understand that we understand them when we're working with them. That's definitely a big thing. But before we get there, you said to me that you had just created a new resource called the Fatigue Fixer. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, just based on what I normally see when my students walk into a yoga studio or when my clients come to me for a healing, very often the first thing they say to me is, oh, I'm doing okay, but I'm just tired. I just have so much going on. I'm exhausted. So I realized that we all need a little something that can support us, in relieving fatigue. You might not necessarily have fatigue, maybe you're just tired, but if we always tired, that can eventually lead to more serious symptoms of fatigue. When we run on that empty tank, I'm going to say, that's when we start running into more serious issues like stress and anxiety, overwhelm, burnout. So it's important for us to kind of prevent that if we can. So the Fatigue Fixer came to me just through basically chatting to my community. They've all kind of had that one thing that they wanted to fix, and I've decided I wanted to create a holistic kind of journey for people. So the Fatigue Fixer is a 5-day journey. And in there we do, firstly, I start off with a few little tips just to prevent fatigue. And then I take you on some gentle yoga, some breath work, some energy healing for fatigue. So it's kind of like a mishmash of everything, all my modalities together to help support the body and mind and soul through fatigue.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to talk about this more. I think it's very, very important in today's modern times. It definitely sounds like something that a lot of people, a lot of women definitely would suffer from and probably don't even realise that there's something that they can do about it. They probably think, oh, it's just normal. I just need to deal with it. But before we do that, I've done things a little bit out of order today. That's okay. Change is as good as a holiday, they say. So tell us why you do what you do, what brought you to doing what you're doing today.
Wow. Okay. So quite a long journey to where I got to from where I am today. But basically, I lean on my own experiences, and through my own journey, I wanted to share what I have learned and help prevent, whether it's burnout or illness, in the community, and especially for women. And my journey starts in 2015, when I was living a healthy life. I was had a very active lifestyle. So I was running ultra marathons. I was had a busy corporate career. I was climbing the corporate ladder, very successful. But through that process, I actually became ill, and not because of my health regimen or anything, but I actually had a blood clot on my brain, and that was due to the pill. Actually, the hormone replacements actually caused clotting, and that went into the brain. And through that experience, I had to really slow down. I wasn't allowed to run marathons anymore. The doctor said you can still run, but maximum 5 kilometers and very slow.
Wow.
And maybe once a week, where I was running every single day.
Wow.
I had to take some time off work. I had to go through a lot of unraveling in who am I if I'm not all these busy things, like I was so outstretched. And even though my life was so busy and that didn't cause my symptoms, I had to really relook at my life, and look at ways to manage my stress, because I was using exercise and strenuous running to manage my stress levels in a way as well. And then, funny enough, as I've started going on this journey, I discovered yoga, and through my yoga practice, I learned to really slow down. Healing comes in the stillness and the quiet, not the busy and the always doing. It's more in the being. And it's, kind of through that process, I realized that sometimes exercising and too much exercise can also add to our stress levels and can cause a lot of symptoms that we might not know about. So I'm not saying exercise is bad. I still love my now I'm back to running half marathons. I'm very active every single day with teaching yoga or whatever the case is. But there has to be a balance, and I think that was missing in my life. I was very much, as a lot of people would say in my kind of line, in the masculine energy of the being and achieving and always doing, and there's no time for yourself. And I had to learn, and I'm still learning. It's a journey, because I'm just one of those people. I'm a doer. My personality type is perfectionist, even though I don't always agree with that.
Recovering perfectionist here.
I'm also an Arian, so we always rush into things and give it our everything until we burn out. So I've learned over the years to pick up my patterns. I give a blast at things, and then I need to come back, pull myself back into rest. And I think nowadays, especially women, we have to wear all the hats. I think we saw that very clearly during the COVID pandemic. Yeah. Women really suffered with, now they were working from home, they were schooling their children, they were, looking after their kids while still working. A lot of burnout, fatigue came from that. And one thing that was great about COVID lockdowns is it was actually nature's way of teaching us to slow down. However, a lot of people decided to work more. And we've taken that pattern, we've set a new precedent, answering emails at night, or, working from home and not taking breaks. We've taken that pattern from COVID, and it's now just almost a habit. That's just what we do. So a lot of people are exhausted, and a lot of people are tired, and we can't keep running like that. Eventually, we in a physical body, and that body needs rest. So through my own kind of journey, I've struggled with burnout throughout my life as well. multiple times. You'd think I'd learn. But through that life experience, I want to support women, especially to gain some techniques that are easy, simple. It doesn't have to be hours and hours of doing things, just to help them, find stillness, find that feminine, the quiet, the being instead of doing sometimes, or just some rest, some mindfulness. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Wow. Yes, that definitely did. And it would have been such a scary thing at the time to, have, and probably out of the blue, not expected, because you, as you said, you were healthy. You were healthy, you were fit, you were active. And this is the thing, that it's not always, there's not always something that you expect to come, but we still have to deal with it regardless. So thank you for telling us your story. I actually haven't heard that. I've heard part of your story before, but I hadn't heard the part about it. So that definitely explains why you are where you are. I can definitely say, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who can relate to what I'm about to say, and that is that I'm definitely not a runner. So I do not understand this running thing. However, I can understand that if it's something that you were used to doing and love doing it, it would have been totally life-changing for you not to be able to do that in the same way. And I also get that yoga makes you slow down. Yoga is something that I myself struggle with. I know that it is very good for me. I know that. However, I still struggle with it. And part of the struggle is that, which says a lot, is that I don't take the time out to slow down as often as I should. And the whole time, whenever I'm doing yoga, the whole time I'm thinking, what could I be doing right now? So I love that you have come up with some easier, simpler things from what I just got from that conversation. Some easier, simpler things that can help. So definitely want to know more about that. So what are some of the things that people can do? So if they've identified that they need to take some time out for themselves, which definitely is something that we all need to do, it's part of being a human being. And as you said, if we don't rest, we can't heal. What are some simple things that people can do?
Yeah, so I mean, I know that we all have limited time. So a simple thing that we can do is just pour yourself a nice cup of tea and just drink your cup of tea with nothing else in front of you. This is so easy, right? Like, we always multitasking. But, tea is such a good example because it's warm, it's soothing. Obviously, you can drink coffee if you like, if that's your beverage of choice. Just be careful. Obviously, caffeine can, keep us awake at night. It is a stimulant. So if we are high cortisol and we're running on fumes, that stimulation is going to last for a little bit and then we might crash. So that's why I'm referring to tea. But just maybe reflect about when last did you just do one thing, and maybe that's that cup of tea, and maybe you set a timer, drink it for 3 minutes and just enjoy the taste. Maybe look out the window. Really good idea, especially if people are on their computers a lot, is to exercise the eyes, send them out into the world. So we don't put too much strain on the optic nerve as well. We also, when we look outside, we're taking our eyes out of the technology, which we have so much of nowadays. So, and all this technology obviously suppresses our melatonin. So just by taking a few minutes More obviously can help, but if you only have 3 minutes in your day, I would say that's a really good one that you can do. If you have a little bit more time. Yes, sorry.
I was just going to say, just to put this in perspective for those people who maybe aren't quite getting it yet, this means time without your phone, without without your laptop, without your iPad, without anything else, just sitting down with you and a cup of tea and your thoughts.
That's right. Yes. Scary. I know.
It is. And when you said even if you only have 3 minutes, I was going to say 3 minutes is better than 0. So if that's where you start, then that's a great start.
Yeah. And, you know, like that's how we start making habits, you know, if you just carve out that little bit of time, set a timer so you know when it's over, you kind of like, you know, so, and then you can continue with your day. Just taking that small little pause will be super helpful.
What else?
Another thing that we can do, and this one you can even do while driving, is some nice deep breaths, because nowadays we mostly breathe in the upper chest. Because we're so high strung, all our activity is up here nowadays, it's in the brain. So for some reason, we don't really breathe very deeply, and we need those deep belly breaths to help stimulate our rest and digest. So even if you're multitasking and you can't take a 3-minute break, it'd be good to consciously breathe down into your belly, hold the breath for a few counts, and then exhale slowly. So something that you might have to practice if you're working, to kind of bring in the belly breaths and still typing and thinking and all the rest. If you can just do the breathing, that's even better. But you don't have to close down your eyes. You also don't have to take a long time. It takes 2 minutes for us to switch the nervous system into rest and digest, into more of that feeling of being instead of doing, if we do focused belly breaths. We also get a lot of other health benefits out of breathing deeply. We detox. 70% of our detoxification happens through the exhale. So we get to detox the body, and also stimulate digestion. Digestion and the breath is very closely related. The diaphragm pushes down into the digestive organs on the inhale, so that helps to, you know, stimulate movement and releases tension in the connective tissues around the digestive organs. So a really quick one that you can do if you need to still multitask as well.
So if going back to what you just said about 2 minutes, if just say you've had a really stressful morning, you're really stressed out. So obviously if you're stressed, your body's going to be in that fight and flight mode. 2 minutes of just belly breathing is going to put you back into out of the stress mode.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. 2 minutes. Everybody can do 2 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I wouldn't recommend you multitask if you're really highly stressed and you need to get, maybe that is closing down the eyes or bringing your eyes down to your nose. So we're just taking out the extra, you know, information coming in all the time. You know, the eyes take in so much information, and the brain has to continuously think, well, what's important from that information, and only filter through what we need to see. So if you're highly, highly stressed, maybe that's a softer approach. If you have a little eye pillow, maybe that also, again, set a timer, and you can choose if you have more time. But the 2 minutes, what I like about that is you can do that multiple times a day. You can maybe do that after a stressful meeting. Just go to a you know, quiet space, put in some headphones. You can play some nice relaxing music, maybe the beach or whatever sounds really help you calm down.
Do it on the toilet.
Do it on the toilets. Yeah, I did that many times while I
Yeah.
was still in the corporate world. I'd be highly stressed about something. I'd just go take a little toilet break. No one ever even knew, like, you know. So, and before bed, also really good because, you know, we want to make sure that we clear the mind. If you add a little count to that belly breath, that also helps to keep the mind focused. So what I might say is inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6.
Okay.
That's going to help the mind go, okay, I had all these things to think about, but now I'm counting. So I can count. So if I just focus on that counting, that's going to also just help with the process. So before bed, again, we're switching on the rest and digest before bed, which is nice because we can get access deeper sleep if we're in a calmer state before going to bed.
So say we don't have a timer, so we don't know how long 2 minutes is. We're doing into the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, exhale for the count of 6. How many rounds of that would you suggest we would get through in 2 minutes?
About 7 to 10.
Okay.
So if you just do 7 counts, that's probably more than enough. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And the reason why I suggested doing it in the toilet is that this is a conversation I had with myself when I first learned about the benefits of visualization. And again, I definitely understand the busyness and wearing all the hats and doing all the doing. And I had this little story I was telling myself that, you know, that's great. Visualization is a wonderful tool and I definitely should do it. However, I don't know when I'm going to do it at the time. And then I thought, oh, well, I go to the toilet how many times a day? Everybody goes to the toilet however many times a day. How long are you in the toilet for? You're usually in the toilet for 5 minutes at least. Why can't I do it when I'm in the toilet? And then I'm not taking any time out. I'm just doing it while I'm doing something else that I have to do every day. So multiple times a day. So you know you've got to do whatever you've got to do that's going to help you, and that's part of building a habit as well, is attaching it to something that you already do automatically. So don't discount doing things in the toilet just to get started. And once you started, then it becomes a habit and continue doing it whenever you need to do it.
Very true. And why not habit stack, as they say in Atomic Habits?
Yes, I'm definitely. I love that book. Great. And another really good one is Tiny Habits. So, all right. So I also want to touch on, you were talking about, and I don't know if you said it in these words, but you were basically saying exercise can be taken to excess. And that's something I definitely need to highlight as well, that, you know, so often people feel like they have to do these excessive amounts of exercise to get whatever goal they're trying to achieve, and that's not necessarily the case. And we need to keep in mind that that exercise, I like to call it movement. It sounds better to me to call it movement, is a stress on the body, and it can either be a good stress or a negative stress. So anything, you take it too far and have a negative impact. And definitely sounds like that would have been so when you were told you couldn't run.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, exercise, when we exercise, we create a cortisol, which is our fight, flight, or freeze hormone response. Should have mentioned that probably a bit closer to the time. So when we exercise, we accessing those hormones to help us through the exercise. Also, I mean, a lot of times when our body doesn't know the difference between us, you know, running away from the tiger when we were back in the jungle, or, you know, back in our caveman days, versus now in this world. So we spike our cortisol by stressing over the email we didn't send, or our deadline, or, oh my gosh, I have that bill to pay and I'm not sure where that money is going to come from, or whatever the case is. So we already running on a lot of stress hormone. Then if we add in excessive exercise, we're putting that extra stress hormone in our system and prolonging that stress hormone in the body. And it's not necessarily bad to use cortisol for exercise. It's not bad at all, because cortisol actually pushes the blood into our limbs so that we can run and we can pick up things if you're weight training or whatever the case is. So we need that. However, if we do too much of that, then we're always in that fight or flight or freeze mode, which means it's harder for us to come back to balance, to, you know, have some of the more, you know, stillness and quiet in the rest and digest. So excessive exercise, obviously not good for your joints either. We were meant to, obviously our bodies are still ancient technology, even it's brilliant technology. We were meant to run away from danger, not, you know, run. And I'm not necessarily meaning running, maybe you gymming or whatever the case is for hours and hours. We need to kind of pace ourselves. So a lot of exercise programs even talk about rest days and how important it is to bring in that rest. Like even the bodybuilding fanatics out of there, they also have the importance of rest, and just, you know, maybe going for a really, really slow leisurely walk on your rest days if you feel you need to move the body, you know. So in Chinese medicine, they talk about the yin and the yang energy, which is the yin is the soft rest, where the your yang energy is that go, always on the move. And we need to try find a balance between that. So if you are exercising a lot, that's great, but make sure that you maybe add a restful stretch session, very slow, afterwards, so you can help bring those hormones back to a lower level. And that will just help us become more resilient and create homeostasis in the body. Another thing that you might think about doing is for example, we've got something called yin yoga, which is a very, very nice, slow, it's pretty much on the mat. You're just stretching and you're helping the muscles, the tissues in your body rehydrate, and they will dehydrate from stress, from tension, from overuse, that kind of thing. So that can also be helpful to kind of curb excessive exercise. I've already mentioned rest days are really important, and you don't need to be completely lying on the couch. Go for a leisurely walk, maybe a hike that's not too strenuous, anything that's, you know, will help you feel like I'm out there, I'm moving, but I'm not putting any strain on my joints or on my body.
Yeah. I've recently started learning about, and I don't know it all yet, I'm still learning, recently learned about hormones. I mean, I'm a female, I'm 48, I'll be 49 this year, and I'm only just learning about hormones. They do not teach us this stuff in school. It's so important. And we actually don't realise how important it is. Anyway, part of the journey about learning about my hormones and tying it in with fasting as well is that I've learned that at different times in our cycle as females, so this doesn't apply to men because they don't have a cycle necessarily. It doesn't necessarily apply to men because they don't have a cycle like we do. But I've learned that there are times in my cycle where it's good to fast and it's not. And it also is important the kinds of movement that I do. So at times in my cycle, it's good for me to be doing intensity movement. And there's a time in my cycle when it's good to be doing heavy weights. And then there's a time in my cycle where it's better for me to be doing low intensity exercise or movement. And I've always, haven't always, but at one point I learned that I needed to listen to my body, and some days I'm going to be able to do more than what I can on other days. But now it's just getting that little bit more knowledge behind realizing, okay, well, this is why I feel the way that I do right now, because I'm at this point in my cycle and I've got these hormones going on, and it just explains everything. Yes. And the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes and I'm definitely somebody who used to do this. I used to beat myself up when I went to do a workout, and maybe I felt like I wasn't putting in a lot of effort, maybe not as much effort as what I should have been putting in. But it was just that I was not it wasn't the right time for me to be putting in all that exercise. And the point is that it was okay for me not to be putting in as much effort, because that's what was right for my body at that point. So yes. I guess that's just the message that I want to reiterate from what you've said, and so that people get it in a way. It'd be a hard lesson to learn, I understand.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's okay for us sometimes to be not going 100 kilometers in an hour, for us to take the foot off the pedal.
Yes, absolutely. And like you just hit on, first off, I actually thought you were younger than me. Thought you were still like early 40s. So yeah, whatever you're doing, you look radiant and beautiful. And I really do.
Well, I'm still learning some lessons. You touched on that you thought you'd already learned the lessons. Well, I'm definitely relearning some lessons. I think that's part of being human. So it's okay. That's why it's so important for people to have conversations like this, so that other people understand that, number one, other people feel exactly the way they do and have been through the same stuff, and that they understand, and that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the second thing that I wanted to say was, you said something really important there, and that's listen to your body. Yeah, that is, your body is not just sending you pain signals for no reason. It didn't just show up overnight. Usually that's because we haven't been listening, or even digestive, like a stomach ache after dinner, is usually not just there because of one incident. It's probably because we've ignored the symptoms before. So and we cannot listen to our body when we continuously rushing. We need to be in a quiet space in order for us to actually hear what our body has to tell us.
Very important. Okay, so I do have one more question to ask you, but it's how I always like to end the show. So before we get to that, can you tell us how people want to follow you or look at what you're doing in the world? How can they find you?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So the best way is to come find me on Facebook. Wholesome Lifestyle Project is the handle on Facebook and Instagram, one word. So you'll find me there. I'm on LinkedIn as Stel Coombe-Heath. Where else do I hang out nowadays? I also have a podcast called Energy Healing and Wellness, which, if you wanted to listen, that usually we have an episode every week. So I'd love to have you come and join that in the community.
Awesome. I will get all the links from Stel and put them all in the show notes so that you don't have to go very far to find how to contact her and how to connect with her. So as my final question, Stel, what is the one thing that you want people to know if they've listened to this episode? And I know you've probably already touched on it, but as your parting words, if there was one message or one thing that you want them to know, what would it be?
Oh, there's so many, but I think very often we tie our worth into how much we're doing and how much, we are doing for others. And if we're not doing that, then we're not good enough, or it means something about us. And I think this ties in again with the rest. It's so important for us to have healthy boundaries with our health, with our time. And our, we can't always expand our energy and just give and give and give. We need to make sure that we put back and nurture ourselves. So, yeah.
That is such an important message, and I'm glad that we ended on that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Stel. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll see you all on the next episode. See ya.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Remember to check out the show notes, and if you have any comments, feedback or suggestions, I'd love to hear them. If you've received value from this podcast, make sure to subscribe, and I'd love you to rate and review the show. Have a fabulous day.